All right, welcome back to another episode. The NBA offseason is in full swing. I think it started June 30th at 6 p.m. I don't know why I'm being so specific, but it's been about a week since NBA free agency kicked up. A little bit anticlimactic. Definitely over the last few off seasons, the NBA offseason hasn't been what it used to be. I mean, I guess since 2019, we've set our expectations for the NBA offseason sky high. I mean, we got blessed with some really good NBA free agent, classes in like 2019, 2018. What was it in 2017? I'm trying to think. Actually, 2017 was the Kyrie trade, Gordon Hayward. Those are like the first two that I was thinking of. 2016 KD. Whenever I think of July 4th, I think of the KD signing, which is just completely random. Sorry to go on that tangent, but we're talking NBA free agency. A lot of the big name free agents, at least most of the big name free agents, are gone. I mean, especially now because DeMar DeRozan just signed with the Sacramento Kings, which was definitely interesting. I usually find out these things on Twitter, but I ended up finding this out on Instagram, which was the first time I've experienced that. And I was shocked that he ended up going to Sacramento. I mean, I guess for the Kings' sake, it makes some sense. I mean, they have a big three now with De'Aaron Fox, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis. I mean, it's cool because we haven't seen the Kings make these types of moves in a while. I mean, they had the longest playoff drought in NBA history, in the NBA for a long time. So it's good to see that they're making moves and that they're pushing for the playoffs. As far as I guess we're just gonna get into it right now with talking about the DeMar DeRozan signing because it literally just happened. My initial reaction is yes, it's cool to have another scoring option in DeMar DeRozan, but I mean, the defense on this team is just going to be rough. I mean, based on their projected starting lineup next year, it'll probably be De'Aaron Fox at the 1, either Malik Monk or Davion Mitchell, or not Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell's gone. Who did they just select in the draft? Jalen Carter? Why am I messing this up? Why am I blanking on this dude's name? Hold on. Why am I blanking on this dude's name? Sorry, I'm completely this is bad. I apologize. NBA draft. This is one of my guys too, which is I feel so bad for blanking on this guy's name because he was one of my favorite prospects, but sometimes it just happens when your mind draws books. Devin Carter. Jesus Christ. Sorry, it's late. Yeah, so it's either Devin Carter or Malik Monk at the 2. I mean, they just traded Chris Duarte to the Bulls, which wouldn't matter. Chris Duarte is not starting on this team. Well, I guess I saw it on ESPN, but their projected starting lineup would probably be Jesus Christ. De'Aaron Fox at the 1, Malik Monk at the 2, DeMar at the 3, I guess Keegan Murray at the 4, and then 5 Sabonis. And immediately when I thought about this, the defense is just non-existent. De'Aaron Fox, he's a decent defender, but that's what he's not known for. DeMar DeRozan, especially at his age and being a small forward, I don't trust him on defense. And then Domantas Sabonis, considering he's a smaller, I consider him more of a power forward, but if he's going to play the 5, I'm iffy on him being a defensive guy. And then Malik Monk, he's a 6-man. I think he'll come off the bench. I mean, if he didn't get injured at the end of the season, he would have won 6-man of the year, so might as well put him at 6-man again. I mean, they had a lot of success. I mean, the Kings definitely would have been a playoff team, but they dealt with some bad injuries at the end that got them to the play-in tournament and then ended up losing. So, things like that. But I think based on their. I mean, they also traded Harrison Barnes in the deal. Harrison Barnes is in San Antonio now, which, I mean, you're upgrading at the small forward position, so that makes sense. But Harrison Barnes is more. I mean, Harrison Barnes has been with Sacramento for a while, which is crazy. He's been there since. When was the deal? I mean, I think he was there since the offseason when KD signed with the Warriors, which is probably 6 or 7 years, which is crazy to think about. But, I mean, you're upgrading from him. Although, to me, Harrison Barnes is a great glue guy for them. I mean, his game aged gracefully over the years. He became more of like this off-ball 3-and-D guy for a team that needed it. So shout out to Harrison Barnes, but I mean, I guess you gotta take a loss to gain one, and this is a great example of that. I mean, but offensively, this team got 1,000 times better. I mean, Mike Brown is a good head coach. I trust him, especially on the defensive side of the ball with everything. So I think they'll probably figure it out. I mean, there's going to be a lot to figure out on who's starting at the 2, who's starting the 4. I mean, there could definitely be scenarios where Demar Derozan plays the 2 guard, which I'd like him better at. We'll see about that. I mean, I guess you can see it also maybe just sliding down that starting lineup and have DeMar at the 2, Keegan Murray at the 3, Sabonis at the 4. I know JaVale is still there, but I wouldn't trust him starting. I'm trying to think of other centers on this team, but I guess that's the reason why they'd have Sabonis starting, and I think he's already played. He's played a lot of the season last year at center. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to NBA reference that real quick. But, yeah, I mean, I think this team will end up becoming a playoff team, which just considering the why the hell is Google just not working? Domantas Sabonis. Anyways, I don't know why the hell Google's not working for me, but that's great for me. But anyways, yeah, I like this deal for the Kings. It makes a lot of sense for them considering they're kind of in this playoff mode and they want to, I guess, compete in the wild west. So might as well put your hat in the ring and see how it goes. You know, you're gonna hope for injuries. You're gonna hope that DeMar DeRozan continues to have DeMar's game age gracefully. Just also one thing I will add too is that De'Aaron and DeMar's games, I don't know how well they're going to pair off of each other because both of them aren't known for their three-point shooting, more so DeMar, but DeMar, his entire career, has been known as the mid-range king, I guess, if you want to call him that. I mean, I wouldn't call him that, but I just called him that right there. And then De'Aaron Fox is more of the slashing, I wouldn't call him Russell Westbrook, but in that Russell Westbrook mold where he's a slashing, playmaking guard. So 3-point wise is going to be a huge question mark. So this DeMar, I mean, I'm not fully on board with it, but I mean, it does upgrade the team, but it's not a signing where it's really going to impact things. It's going to be cool seeing DeMar in Sacramento because, again, the Kings have been so bad over the years. I mean, again, going back to the playoff droughts, I mean, they did not make the playoffs the entire 2010s decade. So seeing them acquire an all-star player like DeMar DeRozan, albeit entering the twilight of his career. Sorry, I'm very much playing devil's advocate with this signing, but yeah, I mean, it's good right now, but a year from now, I don't know how this is going to feel. So that's my thoughts about the DeMar signing. But let's get into other bigger signings. I mean, I guess I'll just talk about the Paul George signing because that's been the biggest signing this entire offseason, I guess. Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, Paul George was the best player in free agency, and he ended up signing with a different team, so makes things a lot more interesting. I guess LeBron re-signed, but I guess player movement-wise, you know what I mean. But yeah, Paul George signed with not with the Clippers, he signed with the 76ers. Again, same thing with DeMar DeRozan, where is it going to improve the 76ers? Yes, it will, but long-term wise and even just through the NBA season, I don't think it's going to push it enough to make the 76ers an immediate, or well, I guess a current NBA contender. I mean, I can definitely shoe them in as being a top 3 seed in the East, bearing no injuries, but when it comes to playoff time, I don't trust this team with Paul George. I mean, Paul George doesn't, as much as he's called playoff P, he doesn't have a track record of being a playoff performer. And when you have a team like the 76ers who haven't made the conference finals in their trust the process era, it just doesn't seem good from, I guess, a media standpoint, I guess, from that perspective. But again, it upgrades the team. You're taking out Tobias Harris for Paul George. That's an upgrade in itself. I mean, it's going to be good because it alleviates... Is alleviate the word? I don't even know what alleviate means. Hopefully it means what I'm trying to say, but it helps relieve the stress from Joel Embiid being an offensive scorer. He doesn't have to go out and score 30 and just be a extremely high usage player. I mean, Joel Embiid doesn't have a great health record, so keeping the ball away from his hands will hopefully result in him being less injured. So I think that's a good sign for them. You know, especially, this is a good regular season signing. I kind of reiterated that before, but it is a good regular season signing, and I do believe that this team is going to be a high-seeded team just because Paul George, there's going to be nights when Paul George is going to get 25, 30 points, and he's going to take over games and win, you know, those random games in January, those random games in February where it doesn't matter, but it's those games where you collect wins, and that will get you a 2 seed compared to a 7 seed that you got because Joel Embiid was injured for a lot of the year. Again, I keep thinking of alleviate, and I don't know what it means. I hopefully means that it helps, but I just don't want to say help. But anyways, I'm just going to go with it. It helps alleviate the pressure from Joel Embiid as a scorer, and also Maxey. I mean, I think Maxey and Paul George will complement each other a lot. Maxey can still be an on-ball player, you know, be a creator, and Paul George, he'll have moments when he has the ball in his hands, but he'll primarily work as an off-ball scorer. And Paul George is still a good defender despite being 35 going into his 35-year-old season, 34 going into his 35-year-old season. He's still a good defender. He ages gracefully. And then also he creates flexibility too. He can play at the 2 guard, he can play at the 3, he can even play in the 4 in some scenarios if you really need him to play that. So I like this signing for them, but I don't think that this is going to translate into I don't consider this team a championship contenders, because again, going back to what I was saying before, Paul George doesn't have a good track record of being a playoff performer, and then just adding that with the 76ers already. It'll be a fun team. I'm going to tune into 76ers games, but at the same time, I don't think that this team is going to really push the needle from this signing. Again, same thing as the DeMar DeRozan signing. It's cool, it improves the team, but by how much? I want to go into the Clippers though, because this I guess Paul George leaving this team really puts this really sucks for them, because I guess I don't even know if you call it an era, but Kawhi Leonard, the Kawhi Leonard and PG era in LA for the Clippers is over now. And it's just crazy, because I remember in 2019, that random July day, waking up, and then I get 2 notifications on my phone. Kawhi Leonard signs with the Clippers, and Paul George is traded to the Clippers for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a boatload of picks. When I saw that trade back then, I immediately thought of this team being I ruled this team as championship contenders immediately, because I mean, Kawhi Leonard just won a championship with the Toronto Raptors, one of the most dominant, albeit the Warriors were banged up, but I don't care, one of the greatest playoff runs and greatest playoff performances I've ever seen. Playoff Kawhi Leonard for the Raptors is one of the best players I've ever seen. And to pair him up with Paul George, who was top 3 in MVP voting at that time, he was also a Defensive Player of the Year candidate for that team, for the Thunder. He had an insane season. He took over, especially when they already had an MVP on that team in Russell Westbrook, who ironically is now on the team right now, or I guess he's going to be traded, which is crazy, but regardless. So yeah, getting Kawhi Leonard and getting Paul George for a team that already made the playoffs in the Western Conference. I mean, that 8th seed Clippers team was fun, because I remember that series against the Warriors where they actually battled. They came back. What were they down? They were down like 30 at one point. It could even be more. It could be a little bit less, but they were down like a lot to the Warriors. And then they ended up coming back. I vividly remember Patrick Beverley and Kevin Durant talking smack to each other. Just that gritty Clippers team getting Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. A playoff team that just added 2 amazing players at that point. I thought that this team was going to be a championship team, but injuries is the thing that really killed this team. I mean, to start, I don't think Paul George was there opening night. I think he debuted for the Clippers like a month in. I forget what injury he had, but I remember that whole thing. Kawhi Leonard was doing his thing in the first year. Then the bubble hit. I mean, that first year was their best chance of winning the championship. And what do you know? Paul George choked against the Nuggets. I forget exactly what he did, but he just did not have a great shooting performance in that series. And the Clippers lost. I'm pretty sure they blew a 3-1 lead. So that was not great for them. And then, what was it? 2020, 2021. This was another great opportunity for them. But Kawhi Leonard tore his ACL against the Jazz in that series. I believe, yeah, it was against the Jazz, and then just that really killed the Clippers. But they ended up making the conference finals. That was also the first year that they had Tyronn Lue, which Tyronn Lue's an amazing head coach. I'll just put it out there. I mean, defensively, he's such a smart head coach. He's great schematically. I really gained appreciation for Tyronn Lue now with his stint with the Clippers. When he was coaching the Cavs, I really thought that LeBron was more of the head coach compared to Tyronn Lue. I guess he was in a certain point. I mean, with any single head coach, LeBron is going to dictate the game no matter who is his head coach. I mean, that's just LeBron James. That's how he goes. So I really thought Tyronn Lue was not that great of a head coach because of it, but he really opened my eyes now that he's the Clippers head coach. Sorry to go on that tangent, but yeah, I mean, they made some moves. They were really close, but I mean, that Suns team, they were playoff bound. I mean, that was their best chance of winning the championship. And then Paul George and Kawhi were both injured in that point in 2021, 2022. That was a chalk season for them. I mean, they were just basically starting, like Marcus Morris got a lot of minutes for them. Who else? Landry Shamet, Reggie Jackson. It was all the role players just getting significant minutes to compensate for both of their stars being injured. So, yeah, and then also I forgot Marcus Harrell signed with the Clippers after he won Sixth Man of the Year. So their bench got really depleted at one point. But regardless, yeah, injuries really, you get my point. Injuries really killed this Clippers team. And it sucks because there definitely could have been a chance that this Clippers, it really sucks because there's a world where I could have seen the Clippers really contend. I mean, I just remember early on those games between both the Lakers and the Clippers. I mean, those two going to the Clippers were great for the NBA, especially early on because of the Battle of LA games in the regular season. I think they played each other opening night. That was just electric. I mean, just Anthony Davis just went to the Lakers. I mean, you have LeBron James there, and then you get these two signings. I mean, that was just great for the NBA. And at one point, I mean, the Clippers are considered a laughingstock of the NBA because, I mean, a lot of people associate them. I mean, they are the little brother to the Lakers, and they've just been such a cursed franchise. I mean, Lob City, they've choked. This era, they choked. And they had that little sliver of hope, though, in that time where they actually felt like championship contenders, and it just never ended up working out. And Steve Ballmer has put in so much for this team. I mean, he's the owner that got them out of the Staples Center. I'm still calling it Staples Center. And he's bringing them to, I don't even know what their new stadium is called, but regardless, I mean, they're going through a whole new rebrand right now. And even in the new jerseys that the Clippers are wearing next year, they had Paul George show them off. So it really goes to show that the Clippers wanted Paul George back, but they thought that he was going to stay no matter what. I mean, it makes sense considering he's the guy that I guess pushed this new movement for the Clippers. I mean, again, going back to the jersey reveal, he was a part of that, so they really thought that they were going to keep him, but it never ended up happening, so it makes that whole thing very awkward. Yeah, that's very funny. I think it really came down to, though, when it comes to the reason why Paul George didn't come back, came down to money. I think the Clippers only gave Paul George 3 years. Paul George wanted 4, which I can't believe that really came down to that. I mean, I get it, sort of, make your money when you want to, but it really goes to show that money doesn't matter. I mean, not money doesn't matter, sorry, that's the wrong way to phrase it. I just completely blanked. It really goes to show that Paul George still wants to get his money, and I mean, it made sense for him to go to the 76ers. He can both have the opportunity. He probably saw it where he gets more money with the 76ers. I mean, he's getting paid an extra year. I mean, on average for his contract, it was a 4-year, $204 million contract. I'm pretty sure. That's what I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that was what it was. So that averages to about $52 million. I know I can do math. $52 million a year. So gaining that extra year as a 38-year-old, I mean, not even 9 out of 10. 10 out of 10 people would do that. Let's be real. I don't care if you're a billionaire. You want to make $52 million in a year. Like, who wouldn't turn that down? So that probably that definitely factored in. And then also being able to still contend with the 76ers. I think he also believes that the 76ers are a better contender compared to the Clippers. He probably saw this team already going down, and he just wanted to hop off that ship before it completely wrecked. So that's how I see it. As far as the Clippers' status right now, I mean, you still got Kawhi. I guess that's a good thing for you guys. But you still got James Harden, and you still got Kawhi. You still got James Harden. You still got Kawhi Leonard. If this was 2017, holy shit, you'd be an insane team. But this is 2024, so it comes with, I guess, an asterisk. James Harden's been a shell of himself. I mean, he hasn't been the scorer he was ever since his, I guess, second stint in Brooklyn, or I guess the second year he was in Brooklyn, and then he got traded to Philly. He just hasn't been able to become the scorer and facilitate. Well, I mean, he's still been the facilitator. He's been an excellent passer over the years. I mean, he averaged, or I think he led the league in assists during the 2022-2023 season. But still, I mean, he's just not the offensive guy that. He's just not a 2 nowadays. I consider him more of a third option on a championship team. And Kawhi Leonard, I mean, again, he doesn't have a track record of being healthy ever since his ACL injury. They've been really trying to preserve Kawhi, but it just hasn't ended up working out for them. And it's really weird because, or I mean, he did get extended though, so I mean, it's good for the Clippers, I guess, but I mean, you're going to have to deal with another 3 years of him going through injury limbo. I mean, it looked like Kawhi was finally healthy for once. I mean, he was healthy for the most part in the regular season. I mean, he had a bounce back year. He made the All-Star team, but then during the playoffs, he just completely disappeared and got injured. It just seems like Kawhi, I mean, it really just seems like for the Clippers, Kawhi and PG just wanted to get paid. They more cared about their money than the actual team being a championship team. So that's kind of how I view it, but I mean, who knows? Nobody's going to outright say that. So yeah, I mean, you're going to have to deal with 3 or 4 plus years of Kawhi Leonard being in injury limbo, which I just don't like. An aging James Harden, Russell Westbrook's gonna get traded, but I don't see much trade capital coming back for the Clippers. Man, this team is aging, and this team is just, it looks like the Brooklyn Nets, honestly. And it seems pretty identical because of the Paul George trade. I mean, I guess going to the Paul George trade now, you trade away Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which I'm not going to fault the Clippers for doing that at the time. Nobody expected Shai to be the player he is today. I honestly I expected him to be a borderline all-star player, but I did not expect him to be an all-NBA, let alone a top 3 MVP candidate. Like, that's insane to think about, and it just makes the Thunder just so much better. I mean, he's always been a great playmaker. He's always been, I mean, 6'6" point guard. I mean, that's great, but also just 6'6" point guards at that point, when Shai was drafted, the mystery behind these taller point guards was in the air. A lot of teams liked them, but the track record of those archetypes of point guards working out was slim to none, and Shai was a perfect example of that. I mean, again, his playmaking was there at the time. His driving and cutting to the basket was there at the time. His three-point shot was questionable, and just his self-creation at the time was questionable. And look at him now. So, I mean, again, you gotta credit the Thunder for what they've done. So, I mean, I'm just looking at the trade at the time. But, anyways, going back to the trade, I mean, they got back loads and loads and loads of draft capital. They're still getting picks from this trade. I think they finally end getting picks from the Clippers in 2026. And this team, I'm pretty sure 2026, and this team could be bad by then. They could have Kawhi Leonard gone. They could have James Harden gone at this point. This, as a Celtics fan, this looks very similar because, again, going back to what I was saying, the Clippers wanting to be this championship contender, just like the Nets back when they traded for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, and they're really pushing all the chips in the middle, and they're losing all of their chips and they're losing all of their money, basically. If you get the poker reference, I'm sure people do. Yeah, so I didn't expect to have this go on. Sorry, I'm kind of just going all over the place right now. Can we consider the Paul George trade a top 5 worst trade? Honestly, even a top 3 worst trade in NBA history. Again, at the time, I totally understand it from the Clippers' perspective. It was a huge risk, and at one point, it definitely could have paid off, but it just never. It just the injuries. The injuries are what killed the Clippers, and it just sucks even more when you have Shea. When you have Shea being a MVP candidate, it really kills this team because you had him on your roster, and then you're giving up all this draft capital where you can't invest in young players and can't really kickstart a rebuild right away because you don't have picks. I mean, the only way they're able to do so is if they trade Kawhi Leonard, and I don't even think they'll get a lot back because teams know that this guy is really injury prone. They're not going to get much for James Harden because which, mind you, they traded, I believe, 2 picks to the 76ers for James Harden, so they don't have picks until like 2030. So they're really digging themselves a deep hole. Honestly, that might be an even worse trade in my opinion. I still think the Paul George trade is worse, but that trade in the next 2 years is going to be fucking awful. But yeah, the Clippers are going to be rough. I don't know what they're going to do at this point. They've signed some good role players, albeit, I mean, they signed, what's his name? They signed Derek Jones Jr. I like that fit. He can play. I mean, I assume he'll play the 4 for this team. I guess it really depends on what they prefer between Kawhi Leonard and Derek Jones Jr., what they want to prefer for wings. I mean, he can play both the 3 and the 4, so it really comes down to preference. I think he should play the 4, in my opinion. They also got a few other guys. I'm trying to think who else. Nick Batum re-signed, which, I mean, I guess a little silver lining in this is that Nick Batum, I guess he wanted to retire because the Clippers traded him, and he really wanted to retire Clipper, which I think he's the first person to ever say that. So that's a silver lining, if that makes you any happier for Clippers fans. Who else did they sign? I know they signed Kevin Porter Jr., which off the court, I don't even want to get off the court. Most people know what he did, but the signing from an off-court perspective, it's shitty. It's a low move for a guy who did what he did, but I guess it's a good move. I don't know. I don't really think it's going to push things that much. Was that the only 2? I might be missing something for the Clippers, but I mean, they're getting role players to compensate for Paul George, but I don't think this team's probably looking into it. I think that this team is going to be in that play-in range, so it's going to be rough. Whereas Philly, I mean, they get better with acquiring Paul George. I'm going to just say it again. I see them being a 2 or 3 seed, 2 in a really good scenario. 3 or 4 is their floor. That's kind of how I view it. I guess 5, that's their floor, but I see it in that range. What other free? I mean, I keep saying I mean a lot, so I gotta push myself. I gotta punch myself every single time I say that. Anyways, the next signing I want to talk about is Klay Thomson to the Mavericks. That's crazy. I really could not see a world in which Klay Thomson went to an NBA team. I really thought that Warriors core were all gonna stay together. They were all gonna retire as Warriors, but that ended up not happening, obviously. I really thought, out of all the players that were to leave the Warriors, I really thought it would have been Draymond Green. I thought he would just go to a team like I really thought he was going to go to like a rebuilding team and become a mentor for that team. But I don't know what Draymond is thinking. I mean, he ended up coming out and said at one point he was thinking about signing in Memphis. Very interesting considering they had that kind of rivalry. So that's pretty interesting, but regardless, Klay Thomson to the Dallas Mavericks. This was a sign-in trade. I believe 6 teams were involved with this. So I think it's just a lot of like second-round picks, like that type of stuff. So it's nothing of value. The only thing that really matters in this in that trade, I guess, is Klay Thomson. First off, this is not the Klay of old. This is not the 2018, 2019 Klay, or I guess from 2015 to 2019. This is not prime Klay. Really, you're dealing with a guy who, again, he's not what he was. His 3-point shot is still elite, but it's not of the elite status it used to be. I mean, not elite. I wouldn't consider it now. I'd consider it great. I mean, that's what Klay Thompson's game is, but you're getting a player whose his body has been worn down. I mean, we all know about his injuries in back-to-back season, torn ACL, torn Achilles, 2 of the worst injuries you can have in basketball. I mean, he's come back and he hasn't come back to his all-star form. He never will be that, but how he did in the 2022 season after all that, it's really impressive, and I got to give kudos to him. But it was a messy season for him with the Warriors. I mean, everyone's making the jokes about 0-10 from, well, I guess it's 0-10 for field goals, or I'm overcomplicating this. 0-10 in an elimination game. That's been the running joke on Instagram. Every single time I open an Instagram comment section, it's that meme, which it's overrun. It's corny. Game 6 Klay is something out there, so know your facts before you come at that. This is coming from a Celtics fan who, a lot of people don't like Klay. A lot of Celtics fans do not like Klay because of the whole stay classy thing. Anyways, it really feels, I do understand the signing to a certain extent, because I mean, you're gonna get a 3-point sharpshooter for this team. I mean, Luka Doncic is going to pass this guy, is going to pass to Klay so much in the corner. I mean, you're getting an off-ball 3-point shot where, that pick and roll now for the Mavericks is going to be so much more lethal now that you have Klay Thompson in the corner. I mean, there's just so many. You're giving Luka Doncic so much more options now as just this offensive hub. Like, again, going back to the pick and roll scenario, it's either Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford being the roller, setting the pick, and then it's either Luka Doncic self creating for himself, getting a mid range or even step back 3, or passing to Daniel Gafford or Lively for the alley-oop or just simple cut pass. And then you have the option now of Klay Thompson in the corner, which is just insane for this team. However, the huge gripe I have for this is I'm going to say it a million times, just overall, defense. Defense is what I have struggled. What is going to struggle with this is going to be the struggle with this Klay Thompson signing. Klay, in his prime, amazing defender. Nowadays, I'm very iffy with it. I mean, again, he has a lot of wear and tear on his body. I forget what what's his name? Bill Simmons said on his podcast, but I know he said that Klay Thompson has played in like about 122 playoff games, which is just insane. He played like straight. He hasn't missed a playoff game really. So it's just insane. Again, it goes to show how much basketball he has played and how much mileage he has on his body. So I don't really trust him on the defensive side. And the thing is, I don't trust him if they play him at the small forward position. I mean, at times he's going to play it, but in the starting lineup for this team, I mean, I said I mean, but the two stars on the Mavericks already is Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, who are both guards. So you can't have Klay Thompson play at the 2 for this team. You have to up him to the 3 if you want to keep him if you want to play him in the starting lineup. I see it more as a 6-man for this team. I think that's the most logical sense for them, just based on his defense and just based on, again, the amount of minutes he can play. I don't feel comfortable playing him a significant amount of minutes at the small forward position in order for this signing to succeed. So it really just depends on what the Mavericks do for Klay when it comes to his minutes and when it comes to just everything other than 3-point scoring for them. So I like it in some sense, but I'm really iffy about it. I mean, it's cool. It's really exciting seeing Klay on this team, and Luka's smiling in Slovenia or wherever the hell he is right now, probably smoking on a hookah. If you know, you know. He's happy getting a 3-point shooter. I mean, you're upgrading from Tim Hardaway to Klay Thompson, so that's a significant upgrade for Dallas Mavericks fans. But you're also losing your best defender in Derrick Jones Jr., so it's a double-edged sword in that sense. You're really taking up defense, or you're really taking up defense for offense. I think that's the right way to point it, but regardless, for a guy in Klay Thompson, so it can either go really well or it can really go really bad. No, I wouldn't say bad, but I wouldn't say really bad, but it can definitely go not good for this team, and I lean towards not good. I don't think Klay Thompson, I don't think the signing is going to be that awful. I mean, from a contract perspective, it's not bad. They can definitely trade this. They can definitely trade Klay if everything falls apart, but I don't think it would necessarily. It's just the defense on this team. Again, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving aren't known as great defenders, so adding a guy like Klay Thompson into the mix, it just adds a lot more responsibilities for a guy who has a lot of tread on his tires to become a defensive anchor, not a defensive anchor, but a defensive player on this team. So that's what concerns me. So if he stays as a 6-man and stays as just the spot-up shooter, I like this signing. But if he plays majority of the season at small forward and his 3-point percentage goes down, he just doesn't look good as a scorer, as a defender more so, things like that, this is when the signing can get a little bit iffy on that. But I do like this signing. I gotta look at the other signings in this league. In the season, or in the off season.